Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Daily Fantasy Cafe podcast at Cafe on Air. I'm Big Italy 42, joined here by Spencer Limbach. You may know him as Spencer_L on Twitter. How's it going today, man?
Pretty good. A little bit cold here in the Midwest. It's about 0 degrees, but other than that, doing all right.
Yeah, I feel your pain here, man. I'm in Ohio here too, so it's pretty rough out here. But at least the sun's shining, so we can't have it all, but we got something at least.
I'll take that. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, man. We're gonna go ahead and start off here with a little bit of recap from last night. Somehow a pretty exciting two-game slate, some of the best that we've seen all season. I mean, we had Russell Westbrook having a monster game despite only shooting 12 for 38. And then saying after the game maybe he shot too much and needs to trust his teammates more, and then made sure he covered his own bases by saying he does trust them. But 38 shots seems a little bit extreme for any game, any scenario. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, we all knew he had a monster usage rate with Kevin Durant out, but this takes it to a different level. I mean,
I mean, it's all the concentrated value pretty much with him. I mean, we even saw last night. I mean, Serge Ibaka, Enes Kanter had decent games, but I mean, with him taking 38 shots, there's not much left to go around for everybody else.
oh, that's
Yeah, we had LeBron had himself a huge game as well. 42 points, 11 rebounds, 5 assists, 3 steals. So two-game slate. If you didn't have that duo of Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook, you were pretty much on the outside looking in. And
it seems like such a waste. Just, I mean, for a 2-game slate for those guys to go off, you'd rather, have them incorporated to one of your big tournament lineups on a Wednesday or a Friday.
yeah, I mean, we saw, what was it, 80, I believe 82 DK points last night from Westbrook and 71 from LeBron.
I don't think I've ever seen an 80 plus.
Yeah, Westbrook actually, I was looking at his logs 9 games ago. He hit 80. So he has 2 in his last 9 games over 80.
Another triple-double.
Yeah, absolutely insane. So definitely those bonus points on DraftKings there, helping him out towards that ridiculous total. But one other guy I really want to mention is Eric Bledsoe. We know he had a great game. Really efficient. 11 for 16 from the field. 28 points, 13 boards, 9 assists. Just barely missed out on that triple-double. So he was another guy over 60 fantasy points that definitely carried you on a short slate.
It's insane how overshadowed he was, just due to LeBron and Westbrook going off that, Bledsoe just kind of fell through the cracks, even though on most nights that would be the stat line of the night.
Yeah, and the more impressive thing, I mean, you got him for almost $3,000 cheaper than either of those other guys. So, I mean, if you played him, yeah, you could even play him with one of those 2 other guys and probably had yourself a decent night. So, those are the takeaways from last night. I'm not going to go too much into it. 2-game slate. Really cut and dry. You played those guys, you won. You didn't play those guys, you lost. Moving on to tonight, we're going to go ahead and I'm going to cover a couple of injuries to start things off. We're going to get into implications when we do the game-by-game breakdown here. Out for tonight, nothing substantial. We've got Yusuf Nurkic out for Denver, Nick Young out for the Lakers, and Aaron Gordon out for Orlando. So nothing is going to change anything significantly there, but we do have some significant potential injuries. DeMarcus Cousins, doubtful for tonight with ankle and hip injuries. Obviously, if he goes out, that's going to bump up Rudy Gay and pretty much only Rudy Gay. He's going to be some sort of value down low, maybe with a Jason Thompson. We'll get into that a little bit more here in a few minutes. You see also doubtful Jose Calderon and Darrell Arthur. Latest news that I saw this morning, Pau Gasol missed shoot-around with an illness. We've seen this before. Usually powers through it. I still imagine he'll give it a go tonight. Few other questionables. C.J. Miles for Indiana, Patrick Beverley, and James Harden, although both of them did go through shoot-around. So that's all the significant injuries we've got going on today. You go ahead and go into the game-by-game breakdown now. Starting off here with Cleveland and Indiana. We've got a 199-point total. Cleveland a 4.5-point favorite. Obviously, LeBron, your top target in this one. No one needs to tell you that. He's 10.3 on DK tonight, so I think he's obviously in play. Is there anybody else in this game that you're looking at? Because from my end, on a 14-game slate, I'm not investing too much into this one.
No, honestly, I mean, I might have a little bit of LeBron, but probably not much. I mean, there's just so many other good plays, and, he's pricey, especially on Fanduel, too. But
yeah, I think he's 10.4.
Yeah, and you mentioned earlier how Rudy Gay is going to see a huge bump tonight with Cousins doubtful. So, I mean, he's probably the upper, mid-range small forward pick you want to go with instead of LeBron, because
Yeah.
he could easily replicate LeBron's total tonight.
Yeah, I completely agree. And looking at LeBron's logs, he was in the mid 40s for quite a few games in a row until that explosion last night. You know, the primetime game against Golden State maybe kind of got up for that one, but Cavs are playing really well. They haven't needed him to do a whole lot recently with
And
his production.
playing down in pace against Indiana at Indiana after that, emotional game last night, it doesn't look like a great spot for him. Obviously, he's always in play because it's LeBron. But I mean, yeah, he might be a fringe play, but other than that, I'm not seeing really any other plays from this game that I want to invest in.
No, me either. And I mean, 14-game slate, that's as big of a slate as we're going to see, so no needing to force a guy like LeBron into your lineups tonight, I don't think. Moving on here, we got Washington at Philadelphia. Just 192-point total. Washington, 8.5-point favorite. A guy that's been playing really well recently, Marcin Gortat. 5,200 on DK. Last 3 games, 41.5, 36.75, and 29.75. He's on my short list for centers. The short list that really isn't that short tonight on a huge slate. But how are you feeling about Gortat? Is he a guy you're considering down low?
Yeah, I really like him. I mean, there's not a whole lot of competition in that price range for Gortat. I mean, you're kind of scrounging in that area. You see Roy Hibbert, guys like that don't really impress me. So, I mean, I think he's the value pick of the day at center. I mean, obviously, great matchup with Philadelphia, who ranks, I think, look it up here, 26th against centers and like 27th in rebound rate. So, I mean, you can't really beat that for that price tag. And plus his recent performance, he's over 30 fantasy points in about the past 3 or 4 games. So, looks like a great pick.
Yeah, and I mean, there's a slight concern with the blowout, but Washington hasn't been playing well at all recently. I'm not too concerned about them blowing anybody out right now.
And they're on the road as well. I mean, that kind of helps Philadelphia's cause, maybe keeping it close. And Vegas has this as an 8-point spread now, so nothing tremendous to worry about. I mean, when the spread gets up in the double digits up to like 12, 13, 14, then you really need to start worrying. But I think Gortat's a great play, and plus, I mean, his salary is really low, so he doesn't need a whole lot to reach value. So, I mean, even if he does see 3 quarters, he could easily hit that mark in a limited time.
Yeah, I agree. And John Wall is another target in this, only for tournaments for me. He hasn't been looking like John Wall. I'm not going that route.
He doesn't look right, and I mean, like you said, 14-game slate.
Exactly.
So many other guys in that same range that you'd want to go with, more value guys. I mean, point guard has a ton of value today, so
yeah. One of those guys we've got on the Philadelphia end, if you want to go that route, Isaiah Cannon, 3,700 tonight on DraftKings. Been averaging 21.75 over the last 3, so he's not putting up huge numbers, but he's definitely paying out that price tag quite easily. So he's a guy you could look at. I'm not going too heavily into this Philadelphia situation. We saw Robert Covington last game got benched in the second and third quarters because of lackluster defense. So I'm going to avoid this Philadelphia situation as much as I can tonight.
Yeah, you really don't know what you're going to get from the 76ers. I mean, they're just a mess right now, and a mess for daily fantasy purposes.
Yeah, exactly. I'm gonna stay away on the big slate. Moving on to a game that surprisingly has quite a few options. Charlotte at Boston. Boston a 2-point favorite, 198-point total. We got Mo Williams again in his new role. Been playing very well, averaging 37 fantasy points, just over 37 since moving over to Charlotte. He's at 6,100 and only 5,500 on Fanduel. So he's going to be, once again, a popular play at point guard tonight. So is he a guy you're looking at as well, that cheap price tag?
Absolutely. I'm probably going to go heavy with him on FanDuel because, I mean, he's discounted compared to all the other mid-range options. But at DraftKings, yeah, I mean, I'll probably have some exposure, but there's kind of a logjam there in that 6K range. I mean, you got guys like Mike Conley, Jeff Teague, Goran Dragic, Reggie Jackson. They're all sitting at the same price tag. I mean, he's cheaper than all those guys on FanDuel, so definitely target him there. But, I mean, you can look DraftKings too, but just beware that there's a little bit of opportunity cost going on there.
Yeah, definitely. And a couple other guys in this one. We're looking at another point guard around that range, Isaiah Thomas, 5,900. Right around 35 fantasy points each game since coming over. He's still playing right around 27 minutes, though, which is a little bit concerning, especially on a big slate. You like his production, but at the same time, you wish he was getting mid-30s. So I think he's GPP-only type of guy for me. How about you?
Yeah, I agree 100% with that. I mean, Mo Williams isn't a good defender at all, really. So, I mean, there's a chance he could go off. But like you said, a little less than 30 minutes kind of limits his ceiling. So maybe GPP.
Yeah, I agree. All right, moving on to another guy I really like in this game, playing really well, Jay Crowder, $4,600 tonight on DraftKings, over 30 fantasy points in 3 straight here. He's been a nice value play. He's playing right around 29 minutes a game right now, so he's a guy that I'm going to be using to get some value at power forward. Is he a guy that you're targeting at all, or are you looking elsewhere for your value?
He originally wasn't on my list, but I mean, looking at these game logs, maybe he should be.
Yeah, he's playing well.
Yeah, I mean, he's getting the minutes. His price tag's still reasonably cheap. Yeah, he's definitely someone to consider, and he's small forward eligible on Fanduel, and that's always a plus because small forward is kind of tough for value plays at times.
Yeah.
And I believe, you know, speaking to that same point, Danilo Gallinari, his price tag jumped up. He was the value play for about the past 2 or 3 games. So,
Yeah,
I mean,
Crowder's
Crowder's cheaper than that, so it makes sense if you want to go that route.
Yeah, I'm on board with that. And another player from this game, one last one, really cheap on DraftKings, Big Al Jefferson, 7,500 tonight. So, obviously, on a 14-game slate, there's a lot of options, but it's not going to be very often you see Al Jefferson with this cheap a price tag. So he's a guy I'm definitely going to be looking at quite a bit tonight against that depleted Boston front court.
Yeah, and the Celtics rank 29th in defensive efficiency against center, so I mean, prime matchup.
Yeah, exactly. All right, moving on to the next game, we got Golden State at Toronto. An interesting thing here, this is the highest total on the night, but still lower than both the games last night. So that tells you we got quite a few low totals tonight. This one, we kind of know where the value is going to come from most nights. I mean, you've got Steph Curry, you've got Klay Thompson. Both of those guys at fair prices. You got Curry at 9.8 on DraftKings, Klay at 7.8. There was mention from Steve Kerr, Andre Iguodala is going to get some rest soon, so his 3.9K price tag, if you're considering him as a value play, maybe double check his status, make sure he doesn't sit out tonight. But one other guy I noticed really cheap who is self-proclaimed, said his game is trash right now, Kyle Lowry. 6,800. So maybe a little bounce back game for him and a up-tempo game against the Warriors. Are you buying into that at all?
You know, maybe for a tournament. How much did you say it was on DraftKings?
6,800.
That's a great price tag for DraftKings. I mean, he's 7,600 on FanDuel. I probably wouldn't do that, but I mean, maybe a tournament in DraftKings. I mean, maybe he'll play up in the pace and, you know, get more production that way.
Yeah, that's my thought there. Definitely get some exposure if you're going to have multiple tournament lineups there. But outside of that, despite the high total, really concentrated value here. Not a lot of guys I'm willing to pay for. Anybody else you looking at?
Yeah, I mean, it's weird that on my original sheet of targets, I really don't have anyone from this game. Draymond Green in a tournament, maybe. He has a really good price tag on FanDuel, 6.9K. And, you know, he's been kind of down lately, but bounced back. Yesterday, had 40 fantasy points. So, and then you said Andre Iguodala may be out. Maybe that leads to more minutes for him. So,
yeah,
could be a good tournament play.
Yeah, absolutely. Moving on to surprising, I guess not that surprising, a nice big total or big spread we've got here. 194 point total, 13.5 point spread. New York at Detroit. We've got, obviously, you mentioned him earlier, Reggie Jackson. I know you wrote him up on an article of yours. So you wanna talk a little more about Reggie Jackson here?
Well, yeah, he's the little engine that could in Motor City. You can see the daily Fantasy Cafe homepage, that write-up that I did yesterday, kind of a recap of the week, with a little bit of a entertaining slant, hopefully. Some people find it funny. Yeah, I mean, I really like him today, especially looking at him at DraftKings. I know his price tag has risen, but I'm not sure if it's risen quite to the point where he's considered fairly priced for his new expanded role.
Yeah, and that was my thinking as well, because obviously new expanded role, but his price was way too low for where he was at now. I think all of this price increase really is doing now is just keeping the masses away, because he was the most popular play last time out, obviously. I think his price was 4,600, and rightfully so.
Yeah, there might be some sticker shock there, but I mean, don't be afraid to deploy him because he should probably be about 7.5K at the least. I mean, given his new role, in
Yeah.
my opinion.
Yeah.
So I mean, you're still getting a discount there.
Yeah, completely agree there. Another guy I'm looking at, this one from the Detroit end, Contavious Caldwell-Pope, been playing really well, over 30 fantasy points his last two. If you're looking at a little value there at shooting guard, obviously usually a pretty thin position despite the big slate. So 4,400 for him tonight, a guy that could definitely crush his value threshold pretty easily.
Agreed. Yeah.
On the New York side, I'm not interested in playing any of these guys outside of maybe a single bullet in a tournament. Andrea Bargnani playing well, but we all know that story. We've been down that road. I'm not investing heavily in that despite a couple decent games in a row. Jason Smith playing well, 4.9K, but I think there's better options tonight.
You never really know what his role is going to be on a night-to-night basis. I mean, sometimes he's going to near triple-double. Sometimes he's just not going to do anything. So, I mean, I guess there's rationale for a tournament play if you look at it that way, but not someone I'm really actively targeting.
Yeah, completely agree. Whenever I can avoid the Knicks, I do. And,
What do you think about the Detroit front court? Any exposure there? Monroe, Drummond? I mean, obviously probably leaning more towards tournaments because there's a little bit of a blowout concern maybe, and they're both really expensive. So,
yeah, I mean, I'm a fan of Monroe.
Yeah, Knicks front court is horrible at rebounding. I mean, they really don't have anyone to match up with these guys. So
yeah, definitely a big size advantage and athleticism as well. I mean, not a whole lot of athleticism down low for the Knicks. So I'm more of a fan of Monroe. He's got more of a stable floor. So if I'm going to target one of the two, it'd probably be Monroe. I think Monroe 7,900 and Drummond 7,800. So if I got to choose between the two, for me, it's Monroe.
Yeah, but I mean, there's so many good plays today that it's. I mean, you don't have to force them in if you really don't want to, I think.
Exactly. And it seems like that's going to be the common theme tonight. Plenty of guys that are in play, but no need to pay up for other guys with cheaper options elsewhere.
And it's going to be fun tonight. I mean, ownership percentage is going to be down with all these options on the board. It's going to be interesting, high-scoring night.
Yeah, it's going to be exciting. And strangely enough, last night, more high-scoring than Wednesday night was with the two-game slate. But I don't expect a whole lot of 70 and 80-point performances tonight. So probably level out a little bit. Next game we got here, Orlando at Atlanta. Atlanta, an 11-point favorite, 196-point total. Not a whole lot I like to invest in here, especially on a big slate. Hawks kind of spread the ball around a lot. Hard to say who's going to have big games. You got Jeff Teague, whose price is really down. You mentioned him earlier. 6,300 here on DraftKings. I'm a big fan of Al Horford as well. 7,400. Nikola Vucevic, not known as a good defender. Good rebounder, but that's about it. On the defensive end, he can definitely be exploited. Is there anyone else you like in this one?
No, I mean, Orlando is such a bad defensive team, especially as of late. But at the same time, like you said, the Hawks spread the ball around, and it's really hard. I mean, they're all priced appropriately, except for Teagues, whose price is depressed a little bit. But, I mean, yeah, it's hard to really find anyone.
Yeah, so this game's going to be an avoid for the most part for me with the big point spread and – yes, good opportunity, but we've seen this game before. You could see 6 different guys for Atlanta put up 20 fantasy points. So
yeah, and you really don't want to risk a blowout, especially with so many other options. You know, kind of the theme of what we've been saying this whole podcast. So
yeah, exactly. Moving on to a game that could get really interesting tonight. Already got a little bit of intrigue with a 206.5 total. Houston favored by 6.5. We already mentioned Patrick Beverley and James Harden questionable for this one. Beverley with an illness and Harden tweaked his ankle. Fourth quarter last game. So obviously if James Harden sits out, there's an enormous amount of usage to go around. So I was looking at the game logs from the last one. I mean, you saw Terrence Jones is playing really well. He's a great play. I'm a big fan of his. Despite the price being up to 6,500, you've got guys like Trevor Ariza pretty much have about a 30-point floor. And then if you want to go a little bit deeper, Corey Brewer, 4,100. He's been playing really well also. So obviously it's going to be very dependent on if Harden sits, if Beverly sits, but opposite side of the ball, the one guy I'm really looking at who's got a great price is Joe Johnson, 5,900, coming off a 40-point performance. So who do you got in this one?
Yeah, I really like Joe Johnson. I believe Houston's in the bottom 5 at defending shooting guards, so I mean the matchup lines up good. And if Harden and Beverly sit, do you think Jason Terry's worth a look? I mean, yeah, he's the only guy they really have that's going to work point guard, shooting guard. I mean, he's going to get some minutes. He's near minimum salary, so
Yeah, and
maybe.
especially on DK with the 3-point bonus. You know, Jason Terry likes to shoot a lot of 3-pointers, so if he gets hot from outside the arc, he could be in a great value.
One other guy I'm looking at is Demo Donatas Mateunas. Did I say that right?
Pretty close if not. It's got to be somewhere right around there.
I tried. No, but he's cheaper version of Terrence Jones, and he's seeing over 30 minutes a game, and 30 fantasy points in 2 of the last 3. So he's 5,400 on Fanduel, and I believe a similar price on DraftKings. Yeah, 5.3K. So I mean, he's a cheaper version of Terrence Jones. If you think they can, kind of have similar production, you can go a cheaper route that way.
Yeah, I agree. And this seems like a game that I'm going to have probably the most exposure to on the Houston Rockets end, even if James Harden goes, because he's a good facilitator. So we know he likes to get these other guys involved. And, I mean, guys like Terrence Jones can get involved with block shots, things of that nature. So I'm a big fan of this one. We
can agree if Harden plays, he's probably not going to someone you want to target.
No,
would you agree?
Yeah, I'm with you there. I mean, 11,000 tonight on a 14-game slate. If I'm paying anything near that price for someone tonight, it's for Russell Westbrook, not for Harden.
Yeah, and you don't know how the ankle injury is going to affect his performance, etc. Yeah,
exactly. And I mean, we know a lot of his value is getting to the line, driving to the basket. So if you kind of take that part away, I mean, maybe he throws out 12, 13 dimes, but he's not going to be getting to the line 20 times. So I'm with you there. Even if he plays, he's not a guy that I'm targeting tonight.
Right.
Next game, we've got the Clippers at Memphis, matchup of a repeat of last week's game, and we've got the obvious guys in play. Chris Paul, 10,100, had a huge game last time out against these guys. 58.5 fantasy points, scored 30 real points. DeAndre Jordan had a nice rebounding game that day, didn't score a lot. Rightfully so. Tough matchup there against Marc Gasol. So definitely he's priced out for me. He's not a guy I'm targeting on this big slate. 8,900 is a little bit too much in a tough matchup. But Mike Conley had himself a nice game in this matchup last time, too. You mentioned him earlier as well. 6,300. I believe it was 36 fantasy points last time. So outside of them, Jamal Crawford's always a target, but he's so dependent on scoring that he's not a guy on a big slate I'll be targeting.
Did he have any peripheral stats last game? I remember looking at the box score, and he had like 24 points and 1 turnover. Like, that was it.
Yeah, I don't think he had many. I'll have to find here. His logs.
No, he had 2 rebounds and 2 turnovers. I just looked it up.
Yeah, so basically none because they pretty much cancel each other out at that point. But yeah, that was the mini Carmelo line there from Jamal Crawford. So yeah, this big of a slate. I know he's been a value play. He's got some upside, but there's not a chance I'm playing him tonight at that price.
Yes, agreed.
On the Memphis side of the ball, outside of Mike Conley, nobody I'm really interested in. Marc Gasol, a lot of his value is coming from rebounds there, and he hasn't been playing great recently, so I won't be targeting him. Anybody else you like on the Memphis side?
No, I mean, I really like Conley. I mean, his price is down because he was pretty bad leading up to the All-Star break, and now he looks back like himself, playing 35-plus minutes, scoring 35-plus fantasy points. So I think he's playable in tournaments and cash games.
Yeah, I agree. And he's a guy that seems to always fly under the radar. So we know obviously there's going to be a lot of low percentages tonight with the big slate, but I think he's going to be a guy that could be a sneaky value too. So he goes off for 40 points, pay off big time for you. Yep. Next up, we've got Miami at New Orleans. 195-point total, 1.5-point favorite for the Miami Heat. Real specific concentrated value here. We saw Goran Dragic really struggle in the last game, 6,400. Not sure I'm willing to go down that route. Dwayne Wade, 6,800, the lowest we've really seen him all season, or very close to it. I saw him struggle early in that last game. He's not a guy on this big slate despite that price I'm targeting outside of tournaments. Luol Deng, 5,900 is a guy definitely in play. Obviously Tyreek Evans, 7,900 with the Brow and Ryan Anderson out. Who else are you looking at in this one?
You know, that's about it. You could go with the center from New Orleans, Alexis. Yeah. Or the other one, the backup.
Oh, Ajinka? Yeah.
Ajinka, yeah. I mean, he's pretty cheap. His price has risen a little bit. But you're looking at about, hopefully, 20, 25 fantasy points there. Not a huge ceiling, but, maybe as a filler. Yeah. But, I mean, like you said with Tyreek Evans, he's in play with Davis out, but they moved him from shooting guard to point guard. on Fanduel and DraftKings, so that kind of hurts. It hurts in the opportunity cost department because, it's so much easier to roster him at shooting guard because while he's playing point guard and rack up peripheral stats like that. But, I mean, I don't think I'm going to go that route now that he's listed at point guard, and there's so many good mid-range and cheap point guards like Mo Williams, Reggie Jackson, and Mike Conley. So
yeah, I agree there. And I mean, he's shown himself solid consistency, but his ceiling's been right around 40 points there. And on a big slate, you need guys to get more than your 5x salary there if you're going to win yourself a tournament.
Exactly.
Next up, we've got Minnesota at Chicago, 195-point total. Chicago 6.5-point favorite. I mentioned Pau Gasol sat out shoot around tonight. At this point, I'm not really concerned unless I hear word that he definitely won't play. Could have just been a precaution to get him a little bit of rest. This one, you've got Aaron Brooks in his new role. His price definitely got a little bit of a jump. Still cheap, $4,500. We were talking for the show, obviously, Jimmy Butler in play. More on DraftKings than FanDuel, $7,900 as opposed to $8,800 on FanDuel. I'm not really interested in Kevin Martin with his Jamal Crawford type stats. He scored 28 real points. I think he had 33 fantasy points last one. Only other guy I'm really looking at big time here is Nikola Pekovic, 6,100. Guy really goes under the radar, playing really good basketball, not being talked about. So, you on the same lines of thinking here? Or is there someone else you're looking at?
Yeah, I mean, I like Peck. He's all right and everything. The only concern I have is his upside. I think he's kind of capped at about the 30, 35 fantasy point mark because all he does is score and rebound. He doesn't block shots. He doesn't really get us steals. He doesn't do assists. So, I mean, he's a solid cash game pick, but don't look for upside in tournaments. Like we said, Pau Gasol, he was one of my favorite plays of the day. Now, I don't know. I mean, he's still a great pick. Like you said, he'll probably play. I mean, we're going to have to obviously wait for word on that, but I don't know. This kind of hurts his value a little bit. You don't know if they're going to rest him, if they get a chance, if it's going to affect him in any way, shape, or form. But in 14-game slate, it's not like you can just pencil him in and hope for the best, maybe like on a 5-game slate in this matchup, but it's really tough.
Yeah, definitely. And if he ends up sitting, I will be playing a lot of Jimmy Butler with no Derrick Rose, no Pau Gasol.
Jimmy Butler's probably the pick you want from the Bulls, independent of Gasol's status, because, I mean, shooting guard, he's the play in that upper tier category, in my opinion, and matchup couldn't be much better. So
yeah, I completely agree. I think he's dollar for dollar by far the best option up top at shooting guard tonight, regardless of the status there of Pau Gasol. So I'm on board with that. Moving on here, we got Utah at Denver. Utah 2.5-point favorite, 193.5-point total. Already mentioned that Darrell Arthur doubtful, Yusuf Nurkic out. So it looks like no official word yet, but J.J. Hickson may end up getting the start. Could end up being a decent value there. 3,200 on DraftKings, 3,700 on FanDuel. But we've seen this game before, Brian Shaw. You see a guy that's supposed to get increased role. He plays 17 minutes, so he's a tournament-only guy for me. No way I'd play him in a cash game. But maybe significant upside there if he does end up playing 30 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, I'm probably looking at him. I think he's got a better price tag on DraftKings where he's basically at minimum salary. Actually, he's 3,700 on FanDuel too. But God, we just don't know. Yeah. I mean, that front court rotation for Denver. I mean, they could put. I don't know. I really don't know what they're gonna do. They could put 4 guards out there and just.
Yeah, and who knows? I don't even think Brian Shaw knows half time. I feel like he waits to hear podcasts and see people do write-ups, and then he just plays the opposite players that aren't mentioning anything, just to mess with us.
Yeah, he looks at his horoscope early in the day, and then, just kind of draws conclusions from there. So.
Yeah, I even saw he said he's expecting more consistency out of Kenneth Faried, the same Kenneth Faried who he didn't want to give minutes to. So
and he's back. Yeah, so yeah, I might avoid that route, especially on a slate like this. I mean,
the target in this game definitely going to be a popular play, one of the few popular players tonight. Rudy Gobert, 6,500. Obviously, Denver terrible in the front court, no matter what, no matter who plays. He's going to be a great target tonight. You on board?
Yeah, and they don't have Nurkic to counter his size, basically. So they're going to play someone undersized, whether it's Hickson or Faried. They're both power forwards at best. They can't really check him on the glass. So he looks like a great play. On top of that, Derek Favors. he's priced appropriately. So, I mean, he's more of a cash game pick, but I think he's a really solid pick to hit value at about 35 fantasy points in this matchup.
Yeah, definitely those two guys could eat them alive down low.
Yeah, and then one more guy, Gordon Hayward, always a tournament pick. I mean, he could go out and score 30 points any given game, but I mean, for cash games, I'm probably going to go Rudy Gay at a very similar price tag. Is just more of a sure thing in terms of volume. So keep Hayward on your tournament radar, though. So
yeah, good call there. He's definitely got that 50-point upside. All right, next we've got San Antonio at Sacramento. We both already mentioned Rudy Gay. Rudy Gay's obviously going to be one of my favorites. Seems like one of your favorite plays of the day. Just 7,300, which is a tremendous price. If DeMarcus Cousins does end up sitting, which it looks like he will, Rudy Gay gets an increase in usage from 26.7 to 31.7. So despite a tough matchup against Kawhi Leonard, he has seen some time at the 4 as well. I'm not really concerned about the matchup. The volume's going to be there. He's going to be, by far, I think, the best play dollar for dollar at small forward, and I'm not overthinking this one.
Yeah, lock him in. I mean, that's what I'm going to do.
One other guy I want to mention in this one, obviously, people like to fade the Spurs. A lot of these guys really, really cheap. Danny Green at $4,000 tonight on DraftKings. Obviously, inconsistencies there with a lot of the older guys with the Spurs. Whole team not playing well, but we've seen Danny Green has significant upside. He's a contributor to every category, so I think he could be a nice, sneaky tournament play with legitimate 35, 40-point upside.
Yeah, that's reasonable. I mean, kind of like you said, I really want to do it in a cash game. No. I mean, I don't know if I'd ever played Danny Green in the cash game. I remember the past few years when all the Spurs sit out, randomly because Popovich wants to rest them. Danny Green's like the only available guy, and he still puts up like 13 fantasy points. So you never really know what you're getting from him. But like you said, there is 30 fantasy point upside.
Yeah, definitely some upside. And, I mean, Spurs in the win-now mode. I mean, they're down at the bottom of the Western Conference, so small margin for error off a 4-game losing streak right now. So you don't beat Sacramento without DeMarcus Cousins. That's when you're in real big trouble. All right, 2 games left. We've got Milwaukee at the Lakers, 195-point total. Milwaukee favored by 5.5. Despite, I'm just not a big fan of this one. I wanted to find some guys. Obviously, like Jordan Clarkson at 5K. He's been playing well. John Henson's got nice upside, but he's another guy doesn't get a lot of minutes, mid-20s usually. That's about it for me in this one. You looking at anybody else here?
Chris Middleton. He's a fine mid-range value pick at small forward. He's been seeing the minutes. He's logging, 36 to 40 plus minutes as of late, and that really doesn't look to be changing with Michael Carter-Williams and all the trades and everything. So he's a guy who could go for 35 fantasy points pretty easily.
Yeah.
Other than that, I can't believe I'm going to say this, but I kind of like Ersan Ilyasova.
All right.
A little bit. He's really cheap. He's starting. He could see 30 minutes. Matchup is great. I don't know if you have to go that route on it. Well, I mean, you don't have to go that route on a 14-game slate. But, I mean, he's kind of sitting down there at 4K on Fanduel.
Yeah, 3,300 on DraftKings.
Yeah, I think he's a better pick than, say, J.J. Hickson or something. And he's cheaper than all the other value plays you went on there. So, I mean, if you're kind of looking for a filler in that category as one of your last picks, maybe fire him up.
Yeah, I can see it. I mean, he is a guy who kind of has that reputation around the industry that it's a fade because it's a trap. But we saw, 2 games ago, big game, last game, solid, paid off his value. So definitely a guy you could be targeting some tournaments there, for sure, at that price. All right, last game up, we've got Oklahoma City at Portland. Some excitement here, 207-point total. Portland favored by 5. We saw Russell Westbrook last night with that enormous game. I think he's going to have a pretty high ownership percentage considering tonight. I don't know that I'll be paying for him in a lot of spots. I don't think he's necessary in cash games. I'll definitely have some exposure, but at that price on this big of a slate, I don't think he's a must. Am I crazy in that thinking? Are you on board with that?
I don't think you're crazy in that thinking at all. I mean, does he have anything left in the tank after last night, or did he?
He's definitely not shooting 38 shots again.
I don't know. I mean, it should be a fairly high-scoring game. Is this is this the ESPN featured game?
I
I think
believe so.
I don't know. I mean, if you buy into that stuff, Westbrook's definitely one of those players who likes getting airtime and likes showing up on national TV. So I mean, you could look at that narrative, but I mean, looking strictly from a price per expected production standpoint, I think you're kind of right in your reasoning. I really wouldn't condemn anyone for picking Westbrook. I mean,
No.
obviously, but so many good picks at point guard today.
Yeah, I'm certainly not saying to not play him before people get mad at me for that, but I'm just saying I don't think he's an absolute must play like he is on a smaller slate. But I'll tell you one guy that I think could be a tremendous value tonight, Damian Lillard, 7,800. We've seen him play well in big games like this. LaMarcus Aldridge dealing with hand injuries on both sides. And Russell Westbrook, we know, not a good defender, especially right now without Durant. Focused on the offensive end. I believe Oklahoma City 24th against point guards. So, especially in a featured game, we've seen it. I think Lillard's going to be a nice tournament play tonight.
Absolutely. I had him written down here. I was going to mention him if you didn't. I mean, we saw Oklahoma City. They're playing at a faster pace. They're allowing a lot of points. Especially with Westbrook taking a lot of quick shots. Yeah, Lillard's going to have to be the guy to keep pace with Oklahoma City. And, yeah, like you said, Aldridge he's not himself right now. So Lillard's going to have to pick up the slack.
Yeah, I agree. Couple other guys I'll consider in this one. Nicholas Batum finally seems like he's getting over that wrist injury, playing well. Couple big games in a row. Just 5,500, and what we've mentioned many times, weak shooting or small forward position as usual. So I think he's a nice value play there. I'm not going to overreact to the Wesley Matthews. Had one of the best games of his career last game. He's a fine cash game play at 5,600. I won't be playing him in my tournaments very much. I think you can still look at Serge Ibaka, especially in a matchup against Aldridge, who's not completely healthy. Outside of that, I'm not doing a whole lot.
Ibaka's price tag, I mean, he's 7.9K now on DraftKings. That's playing on a back-to-back and that kind of fast-paced game last night. And so many other options at power forward. I mean, he's a good play, but I don't think you have to go that route.
No, I don't think it's necessary there. And it seems like with Enes Kanter in town that less rebounds to go around for Ibaka, so a lot less pressure off him. Sometimes he just kind of stands back and lets Westbrook go to town, like we've seen, unfortunately, Kevin Durant do too many times as well.
Yeah.
All right, man. Well, looks like that's about it for us here today. We've covered all the injuries, things like that. Anything else you want to add here for tonight's big slate?
One piece of advice is if there's ever time to play multiple lineups in cash games, GPPs, tonight is the night, because 14 games, that probably comes around just a few times a year. I mean, so many options, so much value. I mean, you would be wise to diversify your action, limit your risk, and, just gain more exposure in tournaments, just trying to get that breakout performance from a guy.
Yeah, completely agree, because like you mentioned, huge slate, there's going to be some guys with big performances. You miss out on those guys, and you could be behind pretty quick. So I'm on board with that. I'll be playing multiple lineups myself, so I appreciate you hanging out with us here today, Spencer. Thank you all for watching, and we'll see you guys again tomorrow.
Thanks.